Hola, hola, and buenos dias, GNGs. My name is Trekker2Ks, and welcome to the Gentleman of Crypto. Saha. Welcome to Weekend Crypto, brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto Network. I am Trekker2Ks. If you don't know, the basic idea behind this segment is that I cover the new segments that happen on a Friday to Sunday, more so framed, pardon, in more of an event-driven news kind of thing in regards to like, is the story as it's coming to my attention and how I'm seeing it? Is it a trend? Is it setting a trend? Is it giving an indicator of something starting or something closing out, or just what is it that makes it stick out on my radar? And that's kind of how I frame these things. If you're looking for things as far as like the price talk, the price pump, the hey, watch this thing go moon. Unfortunately, I'm not the guy for it, but we do have other people like Black Guru on here. Black Guru. We also have King and Zay who do the Monday through Friday live at the 10ish hour. And we got a couple other folks too who have more price related topics or thoughts in regards to what's going on within this crypto space, whether it be on the coin side of it or talking about the companies and things that they're doing. I'm just more looking at things a little bit different. But nonetheless, before I get into these stories, and I got a couple of things, not necessarily the biggest news things, like there was a hack and stuff like that, but not necessarily nothing to really talk about on the hack, whatever. But point being is, I do appreciate the folks who are still tapping in, the folks who are listening to the whole episode. I know sometimes I do get worked up, and I kind of have my king moment where I go longer than the 30. I appreciate y'all folks who are still tapping in and still giving me the positive comments and taking my interpretation, my observation, my qualitative observation of these different events happening in the space and incorporating it into how you are looking at doing your own due diligence and how you're operating in the space. I do appreciate that because I'm not a CPA, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just some guy who's been in the space for a little bit of time, and seemingly folks are actually coming back and listening and leaving comments and interacting, so I appreciate it. Just want to say thank you. So let's jump into these stories here. The first story is this one here. This is about the Nigerian social payment app shuts down crypto exchange services. I'm not 100% certain on, well, one, I didn't see this in anything else that I was looking at as far as like on the aggregator side of the news stuff. So I'm like, okay, like I get it happened. This isn't necessarily a good thing as far as the options to be able to access crypto for the Nigerians who are local to Nigeria, as well as who operate in other countries that this particular platform operates in. It's not cool that they lost a way to get accessing on crypto. It does not mean that this is the only way they can get crypto. Do understand that. That's the other thing to know. It does not mean this was their only means of getting crypto. It just means that one of the number of startup companies in Nigeria in particular that came up just happens to be like, well, we're not going to run on this route anymore. There's actually another company that ended up closing down too during this period. But let me get into the first couple of things here. Where am I looking at? So, according to the July 20th statement released on the company blog, Bundle said that it would cease operations of its exchange service as part of the shareholders' decision to restructure the business to focus on CashLink. So, not sure what CashLink is. It is another option. What I do find kind of interesting is that for what they picked out in this article to say, like, here's the talking point, the company, let's say C-suite level folks, the company, people who are running the company are going, well, hey, here's what the shareholder people came up with. I don't know how big the shareholder pool is. I don't know what is the actual voting block of like, well, how many people had to actually agree to this? How long this company's actually been up and running. Not sure about any of that stuff there. But I do think it is interesting that they're putting it on the like, because usually what's been going on is the companies will go, well, the legal landscape is changing and then the market is doing blah, blah, blah. So we have to make our adjustments and consolidation of talent, and we have to look at where the market is moving in order to be able to better weather for not survivability, but the idea of we have to make these downsizements or adjustments or change or drop products and services because of either legal or the way the market is working. And ironically enough, part of what they are saying is that the shareholders in their decision, in their voting power, decided, and just right here in this line, in the statement, the company noted that the decision by its shareholders as a result of the observed growth of the Web3 and blockchain community and the need to focus on payment solutions that meet the ecosystem's need. So, wait, you're going to say that it's about seeing the growth in the blockchain community, but then you're going to go and exit out of having an exchange? and granted, even if like I get it as far as, yeah, the exchange might be a lot, but if we just focus on this one thing of where it's about the payment rail part of it versus the 20, 50 things that you need to do to actually operate an exchange. And then when you're trying to do it on a global, or like you have the national scale, or at least the regional scale of like the different, the different countries that are around Nigeria, right? Then you're trying to say, well, let's try to push into the European market. We'll push into Europe, England, and France. And then it's like, all right, well, let's try to push into the American or the Canadian market. Like, it's a lot more that goes into that. Granted, being specialized as far as just dealing as a payment company, like, yeah, that comes with its own level of responsibilities too. But it's not like you're over there trying to do 50,000 things in regards to how exchanges work, right? Because you got to deal with the you got to be able to, one, the liquidity, right? You got to have the security folks. You got to have the team of people who can understand how to look at each one of these different coins and tokens and projects that want to be on your thing. If you even get the bigger volume like that, like, it's a lot more that goes to it. So just to say that this is somewhat of a interesting shift that is going on with them. And if you're over in Nigeria or you're over in some of the other countries, so for example, jumping down to this next line, according to the statement, all bundle users are advised to withdraw their assets from the app on or before September 12th, 2023. However, the company specifies steps required for its users in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and other francophone speaking countries to withdraw their assets successfully. So you got what, less than 2 months at this point? No, a little over 2 months. Actually, nope, less than 2 months. I'm wrong. Sorry, less than 2 months at this point. If you're over there locally, now again, you also got to understand in this landscape of there's a number of other companies in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ghana, in South Africa, a number of other countries. So arguably, this will not be the only company that is going to either change direction of what part of the ecosystem they will look to focus their business talents on, as well as the same time. I do actually kind of find it curious that it's this whole thing of like, well, the shareholders voted this way. I'm not 100% certain on how to actually take that one, but it is what they're saying. I do wonder what we'll see happen over the next coming months as we move closer to the halvening, and seeing if this will be a proper play for them. Not certain, not sure, but we'll see in time. Also understand that the regulatory space in Nigeria is changing, and that's like another thing to understand too, that this could be a good move for them. I'm not 100% certain. It'll be interesting to see, like, you know, who is back into this company, who's a part of this company, and how big is the shareholder pool, and like who's on that list of shareholders. So jumping into this next story, blockchain fails to generate block for over an hour. Here's what happened. Okay, so I had to read the story a couple times just to make sure I was understanding what was, quote, being explained here. Okay, here's the thing to note, and I keep saying this when I convey these different stories to y'all, in that you got to ask yourself the question of, what is this story or what is this article trying to convey to me? Is it trying to convey to me actual information, or is it trying to present the topic in a way that it influences how I perceive the subject, the person, or a place? And here's why I say this, right? So let's read into this first couple of lines here. Where are you at? All right, so where was it at? Actually, all right. So this is not the part I'm worried about right here. It's right here. So according to a screenshot posted by Peak Shield, the time difference between the two recent blocks mined by F2 Pool and Foundry USA was about 95 minutes, or 1 hour and 35 minutes. If you know anything about how blockchain works, by the way, you know that it takes about 10 minutes for a full or a block to be mined. It doesn't necessarily mean it is a full block, because empty blocks could be mined, half full blocks, 3/4 full blocks could be mined. It's all on what's going on with the miners on the back end, okay? So that's the same thing they say about the 10 minutes. Now, here's where I remember what I said about asking the question of, like, what is this article trying to convey to me? What is what is my takeaway from this? So they tell you, they named you two companies, they give you a time, and they let you know about like, well, a Bitcoin blockchain is supposed to be about 10 minutes, right? So now as we read further, here's where it goes left to me. And if you don't know, because if like, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on the whole, Bitcoin and block sizes and blah blah blah. But do understand, like, there are blocks that a block is not necessarily filled with transactions. You have the thing called the mempool where things are like in wait to get into a block to be agreed upon and processed. And not to mention, you still have it that transactions can still be backlogged and verified, even though and you can actually change the stats that you pay for a transaction to go through. So if you lower it, it could take longer than an hour, right? So like this thing of, oh, it took longer than an hour for a block to be produced, it isn't as catastrophic as the title might indicate or lead you to believe. Here's the part of why I'm saying that, is because then once you start reading more into this article, it starts throwing out numbers at you. So here we are. At the time of publication, Bitcoin, which makes up approximately half of the $1.2 trillion cryptocurrency market, was changed little at 29,748. Since reaching a high for the year of 31,818 on July 13th. It has fluctuated between 30,000 and 31,000. So here's my question to you who are listening to this. What does that have to do with a technical explanation in explaining to me why was there that delay time in the block being produced? They gave you a price point number, right? They gave you a date, but there's no technical explanation on what actually happened. When you read further into the articles, it's the same thing again. They start talking about other cryptocurrencies, right? It's no longer talking about Bitcoin's blockchain anymore. And then the same thing again as you read further. So I say this to say to y'all, when you're doing your due diligence, when you're trying to cross-reference information, when you see these stories that I'm talking about, I leave the links in the description of it, so you can definitely cross-reference it and fact check me on the stuff that I'm even saying. I do appreciate when I get the pushback from the folks who actually do check me on my stuff, because hey, I'm not out here being perfect. I'm not out here trying to tell y'all I know everything under the sun, and at the same time, I don't want y'all to take everything I say as it's the golden goose. Nah, dog, do your own due diligence. I'm not your CPA, I'm not your lawyer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just some guy who makes these segments, and I've just been around for a minute, so I see certain things, at least for how I look at it. Sometimes y'all agree with me. I do appreciate when my take on these things y'all agree with me on, because it's all right, I'm not bugging. Cool. Other folks see it too. And then other times I know I'm the only one who's saying certain things. There's a couple other things story-wise that I'm gonna cover as far as how I'm looking at Biden's dog whistle, the executive order that he did, was that 2021? Anywho, the point of where I'm going with all of this is you have to really filter through some of these stories where I'm not sharing this to say this is an indicator of anything. What I'm sharing this as far, it's not an indicator of what's going on with Bitcoin. It is an indicator of how these news platforms are trying to throw content at you, or things that are labeled as news, but they're not necessarily informing you on anything, or it's not giving you the details that you need to go, okay, I understand how it happened, or why it happened, or when it happened. I understand the parties involved. And in the case of this, it'd be more so about getting down to the technicals of, well, what happened that the blocks weren't being put together? And then not to mention, F2 Pool is not even the only damn Bitcoin mining company, and neither is the Foundry USA. There's other companies besides them. So that's the other thing to understand about this. Well, so what did the other companies say? Are they showing the same thing that these two companies are showing? Point being is, take all of this shit with a grain of salt, y'all. All right, so we'll jump on to this next story. And this one is another example, too, of what I'm saying about, what was it? Last week, there was a story out of, it was Hong Kong, and there was just this tone where it didn't give enough technical detail for me, or at least detail, as the saying goes, the devil's in the detail, right? And so when you start picking at stories and really asking the who, what, when, where, and whys, what I find and what I'm seeing more in how these news stories are going in these crypto related platforms, like these crypto news platforms, they're crossing into other areas. Granted, this story in particular is a crypto story. So let's jump into this title. North Korea hacking group launches crypto attack through US IT firm. The specific targets of the hack were, cryptocurrency companies, according to the individuals familiar with the matter. Now, here's the thing, all right? So you seen what I had on the thumbnail? It was saying the company was JumpCloud. JumpCloud is an IT company. They provide services on the back end, and it's one of those things of like when when you are running a company, you're looking at your operation going, how much does it cost me to keep all of this in house versus me outsourcing it to a third party provider? Case in point, JumpCloud is that company. There was another company, was it JumpCloud? It was somebody else that was doing, I think, the mailing service stuff. And this was either earlier this year or it was later last year. And I had covered the story, and I was saying it's the craziest thing that when this company had their breach, none of the crypto companies said anything initially, and the company itself didn't even say nothing on their website, on their blog, on their Twitter, nothing. They just totally like said nothing, and I was like, yo, that's crazy. Like, y'all not even gonna try to acknowledge it? But it was the companies that were using the service that had to say stuff, and then everyone went with this common story of, well, it is something on their end, and it was an employee. And it happened like literally, it was like two things came out within the same month about the same company. Here's where I'm going with all of this. You know what, let me jump through a couple of these lines, and then I'll get into my thoughts. So jumping down to JumpCloud, based in Louisville, Colorado, disclosed the breach in a blog post, stating that the hackers gained unauthorized access to their systems in late June. The attackers then focused their efforts on fewer than 5 of the JumpCloud clients. Though JumpCloud did not reveal the affected customer's identity, cybersecurity companies CrowdStrike Holdings and Mandiant, who are assisting JumpCloud, I don't know why I'm saying it that way, and one of its clients respectively confirmed that the hackers were known for their interest in cryptocurrency theft. Notably, the specific targets of the attack were cryptocurrency companies, according to individuals familiar with the matter. The incident underscoring the evolving tactics of North Korean cyber spies who have shifted from targeting digital currency firms one by one to adopting a supply chain attack strategy. All right, so sorry, I ran through a couple of things on here, and I'm looking at 2 different screens, so pardon me for that. Now, here's where I'm going with this particular story and the questions of what am I supposed to walk away with from this story? What are my core points? 1, hackers are being more creative in their approach to how they attack a business, attack a market, or whatever, or whoever the target is. All right, we all understand that. Here's where it gets a little screwy to me, because as you read further in this article, again, the link will be in the comment for this, they're saying, well, one company is saying that it's this group. Another company that is a cybersecurity company is saying, well, we think it's this other group. And so it's like, well, okay, neither of y'all can agree on the group. And then they do this thing where they talk about chain analysis, and chain analysis did some report at one point where they named that, the Korean government supports, I forgot what the name of their big thing is. And it's like, well, they were able to make away with 1 point something, near million or billion amount of money, whatever. Y'all get what I'm saying about the money part. But it's just like, well, what am I supposed to walk away with here? Am I supposed to walk away with that there's more than one North Korean connected hacking group that somehow is targeting crypto companies specifically? Or am I supposed to walk away with the understanding that there are 5 companies that got targeted, or it looks like they were targeted in this company called JumpCloud, that they were clients of JumpCloud? So I say this to you as far as look at this from a security standpoint and go, what am I using actively? Am I on an exchange actively? Do I use a certain wallet app actively? Do I use a cold storage thing actively? Here's the point. From a security standpoint, I would go and figure out what product or service I use that is crypto related that somehow uses JumpCloud on their back end. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, it means that your email is compromised, potentially your password is compromised, because we know that most folks don't have the best password etiquette. Um, and and I'm saying this on if it's something that you use on a regular enough basis, or if it's something that you stopped using a while ago, but it has certain similarities to other things that you are actively using. Case in point, you're using the same password for more than one service or product. Case in point, you use the same email for things that are non-crypto related. And if this is what you've done, I'm just saying you might want to take the time and go figure out who Jump Cloud is connected to and what product or service that crypto company, whatever it is, provides that you might be using. Because this could come back to bite you. And I'm not saying it's going to be a tomorrow thing, but it could definitely come back to bite you. And I had mentioned this a while ago, I think. I had been reading this book, what is it called? This is How They Tell Me the World Ends. And one of the things the author brings up is how what a lot of the cybersecurity folks started noticing in the latter part of this decade, or sorry, the beginning part, so the let's say the 18 and forward, is that you were having hacks happen where hackers were just going into systems and platforms, and they were just looking around, or they were just like looking at areas where you're like, well, what does that matter over there, when you first try to like go through the thought process of why is that information relevant. And the initial thing of it is like, oh, well, it's just about, names, addresses, social security, emails. But you had it that there were a number of hacks that happened over the last like 4 or 5 years where it wasn't that kind of information that was being collected. It wasn't about names and emails and social security numbers and stuff like that. And they were in systems that didn't collect that stuff, but it had other information. The point being is, it's not necessarily about going initially for the quote, the golden info, social security number, address, birth information, stuff like that. Because the other part of like the digital landscape is, do you have enough information to piece things together to make a digital profile of a person? Sometimes it's just about having a right name that's in the same zip code as somebody who passed. It might be the one letter that is off, but you have everything else connected together. Like it gets kind of deep, but my point being is, if you might want to go check out what companies are connected to Jump Cloud. All right, that's the point of where I'm going with that. Sorry for the ramble. The whole thing about the North Korea part of it, like, yeah, North Korea is a thing, but the bigger thing is the hackers are adapting and moving differently. That's just an across the board thing. Don't focus on who they're telling you to look at as far as like, oh, this is a North Korea, this is a China thing, this is no, hackers across the board. And the hacking talent is not where they're telling you to look. That's the other part to note. Anywho, jumping on to this next joint. What is it? Oh, this story. All right. So I had talked about this a couple of months back. And I said this in reference earlier about the Biden dog whistle. I'm going to keep calling this shit the dog whistle. It's the executive order that got put out. And then all of a sudden you started seeing all of the different federal government agencies running around the place, dropping off little hints about how they was coming down on crypto. So now, and remember what I was saying, I said the dog whistle went off, and it's at the federal level, the state level, the county level, and the city level. And you also have like provinces, and you might have districts too. Everyone's going to figure out how they're going to regulate the industry as a whole at their level. So we're talking about mining, we're talking about exchanges, we're talking about what rules you come up with to give exchanges access to the citizens of the state. That's a thing. Look what New York did. In the case of this, as far as Arkansas is concerned, we're talking about that the governor had signed a bill that was like, hey, we're going to treat mining facilities as data facilities. We're going to put them under the same regulatory umbrella at the state level. So now the counties are like, okay, well, if they end up in our county, we got to figure out what we can do to like regulate them or come up with new regulations. Here's the funky thing about this, and I'm gonna get into this a little bit here with some lines of reading. Several counties in the U.S. state of Arkansas are hurrying to adopt new ordinances before August, when crypto mining facilities will be subject to the same rules as data centers. So here's the other thing to note. If there's already facilities there, then like it's not like this is the who's going to be built a year or 6 months down the road. This is like who's already there now, and if they have potential new contracts being deliberated on to open up newer facilities or expand current facilities, right? So that's another thing to look at. So we're talking like it's a money conversation, but it's not being put as a money conversation, because this is about being able to get the taxes and like the whole labor force and how that's going to work out for that county. So where's the other line at? Here we go. So the new state law brings crypto mining facilities under the same regulatory regulations applied to data centers, creating guidelines for miners and protecting them from discriminatory regulations and taxes. Not saying they can't get the taxes out of them. It's just saying, yo, y'all can't go crazy. Like, there's going to be a cap on it. Y'all can't go crazy. Okay? So residents of Arkansas, however, barely had time to discuss the new legislation, which was proposed, discussed, and committees and passed by legislators within a week from March 30th to April 7th. I don't remember when I actually covered the story, but I know I covered this story because it was like 2 or 3 states that was also doing mining regulations too. So State Republican Mike McClure, who authorized the bill, reportedly said that no one spoke against the bill in committees nor on the legislative floor. Crypto mining companies in Arkansas include, pay attention to these companies, pay attention to these companies, pay attention to these companies. This is not financial advice. This is not me being a CPA. This is not me being your lawyer. This is not me being a financial advisor. This is just me saying you should pay attention to the name of these companies that are being talked about in Arkansas, because I also imagine that these companies had to have conversations with the regulators before this bill got passed. So companies' names are Green Digital, MGI Computing, United Bit Engines, and Cryptic Farms. Those are the companies that apparently will/are operating in Arkansas, and they might be in some other neighboring states. Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna jump way down to this other line that I was like, yo, you're straight just gaslighting, my man. Who says this? Where was it? Okay, I'm gonna jump up one. So, what is it? After the bill passed, the Association of Arkansas Counties developed a model ordinance that counties can use before the law takes place. Since June, more than a dozen counties have reportedly passed noise ordinances that target data centers. Right. I also want to make the point that it's not just these people stepping out, and it's not these people stepping out in front on the front porch and not being able to enjoy a glass of tea sitting on the back porch. These people can hear this sound 24/7 from their bedrooms. Justice of the Peace Mari Coates reportedly said. All right, so here's the other thing to note. One, they probably never actually visited a facility, the person who said this. And they probably don't even live in an area where these facilities are even in 2 to 5 miles of them. That's another thing to note. Next thing to note is they can't rezone areas. And 9 times out of 10, these are not small little rinky-dink, like, oh, I got 1,000 square foot warehouse kind of joints. Like, no, you need a couple of acres on it. So these facilities more than likely already sit outside of like the major city part or the major residential neighborhood zoned areas, right? So there's a lot of like hype, but it's like, what are we really hyped about right now? What are you doing? Again, I think it's I don't want to say mislabeling, but it's not bringing to point that everyone's running to find their lane of legislation to have influence in the industry, which then brings it back to how I'm getting my cut. Like, that's the end of the day bottom line of it. How am I getting my cut, and how do I have it to where it doesn't radically disrupt some of the traditional infrastructure and industries that we have set up at the city level, state level, and federal level? That's the bottom line of how this adoption and integration of moving or expanding the crypto industry, whether we're talking about the exchanges, the miners, the vendors who make the ATM machines, whether we're talking about the metaverse NFT side of it, the software side of it, like it's about having the adoption come in, but we're gonna put up the little, the bumper rail guard things for like, all right, you gotta come in this way. Like, here's how the ground rules work. Here's the space that you can operate it in. Like, that's what's going on. This is how adoption looks, y'all. We've been saying this shit for like more than 10 years. All right, so jumping into this last one. UK Financial Service Minister rejects treating cryptocurrencies as gambling. All right, So this story kind of threw me, and I'll go into the caption on this one. UK regulators have been warning investors about the potential to lose all their money in the volatile crypto market. So here's the funky part about that. You're talking about not saying that it's a crypto is a gambling thing, but like you still have gambling, and people lose their shirt in gambling all the time, all the time. Like that's the fact that it was like, all right, let's put it into this category. What? Really? Like the whole thing is I don't understand. Anywho, jumping in through a few lines, British Financial Service Minister Andrew Griffith has rejected the idea of treating cryptocurrencies as a form of gambling. He argues that such a classification would not only put Britain at odds with the global and EU regulators, but also fail to address the risk posed by the crypto sector. All right, so here's what happened. It was basically one department trying to say something to another department. It's like the SEC, no, it's like the CFTF saying something to the SEC or the FinCEN about like, yo, y'all should actually label it this way. Y'all should put it in this category. And it's like, what are you talking about? Why would we put it in that category? Like that then puts it in your, in your lane. Like we're not trying to put that in your lane. Like no, we trying to keep it in our lane. Not to mention, if we even do that, you're gonna mess us up with the rest of the folks on the mainland Europe. Like what are you talking about, bro? That's literally what this whole piece is about. And again, remember what I'm saying. Like you're reading an article and it goes, what is the who, why, when, and where? What am I supposed to walk away from with this article? At least from my take on this, I'm gonna say it as there's still some kind of dispute going on between the different departments within the UK for who might want to try to inch a little bit more of their regulatory muscle. But at the end of the day, they can't change nothing in the broader sense because the MiCA stuff that's coming out of the EU, everyone is pretty much on the same bandwagon across the board. When you look at what's coming out, what came out of the OFAC report back in freaking 21, it's all just playing out in front of us right now. Whether you're looking in Europe, whether you're looking in Africa, whether you're looking in Latin America, whether you're looking in North America, they're pretty much all on the same page for the regulatory stuff and how they're defining the cryptocurrencies in regards to stable coins, in regards to the tokenization stuff, the digital assets. Like it's an across the board thing. So this article itself isn't necessarily an informative thing, but it does show that as far as on the ground within the regulatory bodies in the UK, some folks are still trying to throw some things out there. And the other part about this article that got me was, where did they take the comments and stuff from? It talks about a report and stuff that comes out of one of the departments and somebody suggests something, but it's but does this really matter? And then you didn't give the full context of what was in the paragraph, and you just like took the one line. My point to all of this is the same thing as always, folks. You got to take this stuff with a grain of salt. You got to put this stuff through like real multiple filters and really question like, what is the article or what is this person who's I'm watching in an interview or who I'm listening to on a podcast? Like, what are they saying? Does it make sense to me? How do I cross-reference this with other information and things that I understand? Does it help my position of what I'm trying to do, or does it hurt my position of where I'm trying to go or get out of? That's how I'm trying to tell y'all. Like, and these aren't even necessarily like event-driven things per se. Like the British thing, well, kind of. The Arkansas thing is definitely event-driven because, as I said, the Biden dog whistle with that executive order, that started the cascade of all of these different levels of bureaucracy and judicial actions. Federal, state, county, city, and you might have some district stuff that we're going to see it play out over the rest of this decade. But anywho, those are the last couple of things as far as the stories, and I'm definitely running over on time. I see that. So closing out to say, I appreciate anybody who's made it all the way to the end of this. I appreciate the folks that I will be in contact with during the live stream of this in the AM. Well, yeah, now. Thank y'all. Other thing to note, still doing the Metaverse the Other Side on Thursdays, 8 p.m. That's me in 3D. Again, we holding the more techie, running down rabbit hole thought processes about things going on in the Metaverse. Shout outs to King for coming on the Twitter Spaces for Metaverse the Other Side the other, Thursday? Because we were talking about the strike with Hollywood and what that will eventually mean in regards to like metaverses, as far as like how AI is moving into the creative process of Hollywood. The technology is being pushed in regardless of how they strike. That's the end of the day part of the conversation that we walked away with from that, which eventually will play out into this whole virtual reality stuff. But that conversation will hit the replay on Saturday at some point. I'm not exactly certain right now because I'm still backlogged. But anywho, that's the other thing that we doing, me and 3D on Thursdays, and the replays is on Saturdays. And so again, shout out to King, thank him for coming through. And today is Monday, as it is. I say have a productive over a busy day. If it can't be a productive day, at least be in a safe place, in a safe space, and in good company. That is the best I can wish to you as one human to another. Other than that, have a good one and one.